basically just go into anything.
Much the exact same product for that user. He's just making two products.
I started my first business when I was 13. Everyone is just so friendly and they want to help. Like, how can I help you? Who can I put you in touch with?
You can't just be throwing up random SKUs.
Because you just sell yourself. You're like, oh, this is a great niche. I'll go into it. I'm sold.
However, you should never view it as a quick win. It is a case of it's a long-term strategy, right?
They understand that it's like the backbone of profit. My brain just goes off on a whole other thing, and I just sit there for 10 minutes and I come out of it and I'm like, what on earth have I done?
Hi guys, welcome to today's podcast. Today I'm actually joined by a very special guest, and he was originally one of the founders of Searcheroo, Tom. Tom's a very successful entrepreneur, and he's had many business sales, business flips. He's into properties, into all sorts nowadays. So yeah, Tom, could we just, obviously very brief introduction, but now if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit more, what you do, who you are, and a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Much appreciated. Appreciate being on the podcast today. Yeah, so where do I start with things? I started my first business when I was 13, building little finger skateboards in my dad's garage. Sold them online, built a website, sold to 39 different countries in the first year, and then it got so busy I had to close it down. I didn't understand about taking on employees or anything when you're in the first year of proper school.
Yeah.
So that was my first real experience of like SEO and e-commerce at the same time, which was super eye-opening. I had a little like PayPal button, and that was about the extent of e-commerce back in the day. And then fast forward from that, basically just built and scaled and sold different large-scale content sites, other e-com sites. We've just been in every possible niche. Because as you know, when you have the skill of SEO and being able to drive traffic, you can basically just go into anything in terms of the business, which is fantastic. So yeah, that's basically been the case of things. And then lately, we've then moved more into paid ads side of things as well with petportraits.com. And then from an agency point of view, it's just got to the point where so many people have been asking us to do SEO for them. We've now given in and actually built the business around it. So DTC SEO agency, like super original name.
Which I assume is like direct to consumer, right? For people who might not understand that.
That's it. Yeah. Obviously, we ranked first for DTC SEO agency, which is great. So
I bet that was hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now at the point of that, we just moved out to Austin. So in Texas, moved out all operations out here. So happy and scaling, which is great.
So with that, Tom, were you planning on moving out there primarily for the operation of targeting the US? Obviously, being based in the US, you can probably fly around a bit easier if you're meeting clients and things. Or are you almost treating DTC as we kind of tried Searcheroo back in the day, and it's kind of almost like it's just a side business to your main e-com store, which I believe you mentioned was Pet Portraits?
Yeah, so because we've always done business out here in the States, it just made sense to do. Like the biggest country that was buying like the finger skateboards back in the day when I was 13 was also the States.
Yeah.
So over the years, it just like we've done so much business here, and we've never really ranked anything in the UK. I don't like paying the VAT, and like we're definitely penny pinchers in the UK compared to the States. They love to purchase and higher conversion rates and bigger search volumes and everything like that. So yeah, it kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense for us just to be there anyway. I've always wanted to live in the States, and just much more business friendly, especially Texas, like very, very friendly to business, which is great. So I wasn't really a fan of the tall poppy syndrome type thing that you get in the UK. Not so celebrated compared to the States. Which is good. So, and like all the entrepreneurs that I've met, the different masterminds that I'm in out here, everyone is just so friendly and they want to help. Like, how can I help you? Who can I put you in touch with? Different things like that. And I think there's less people like that in the UK. Obviously, we found them, which is great. Yeah. But the network out here, and the sheer number of people is huge in comparison.
Do you
And
tend to
pretty
find
much
as
all our
well?
clients are here.
Do you tend to find that with that they're a little bit more open to, because like you can still speak to people in the UK nowadays and they don't even know what SEO is type thing, and or
Yeah.
digital marketing, like they're like, what's that? You know what I mean? Whereas I think the US is probably a little bit further forward or further ahead than that.
Mm.
Do you think that makes it a little bit easier to sell, or do you also think that coincides with it maybe making it a little bit more difficult because there's potentially more businesses out there, right? More competitive
Yeah,
things.
I think it really depends in like what circles you're in.
Mm.
Like we find that some people who contact us at the agency, if they're like just starting out and they're a new site and they're just starting to get into like e-commerce as an example, like they don't have an understanding of SEO. But the brands who we really want to work with, most of our clients are in the millions in terms of revenue. And they obviously have a great understanding of what SEO is already. They might have previously tried it, they might have not, but they've heard about it. They understand that it's like the backbone of profit in that sense for most businesses if you utilize it correctly.
With the
Yeah.
DTC agency then and these bigger businesses, so you probably targeting what, like medium to large enterprise, is that right? Or are you still doing small?
What's your definition of that? Most
Probably
e-com sites, like
5 mil plus out. My
yeah,
definition would be 5 mil plus is probably entering like medium sized.
yeah. That's
Uh,
kind of the perfect size of things because the the great the great thing about that, like one of our clients is just shy of 100 mil,
right.
and the great thing about that is like they have so many products.
Yeah.
The site is already like a decent DR. It's like DR 35, not massive, but it's been around for a good few years, and basically the site is like quite unoptimized and they don't have links going to specific pages, so
Right.
it's perfect.
So
Like we
there's,
could
there's
just
a
come
bunch of
in.
quick wins that you can kind of implement straight away.
Exactly, yeah. And if they're nearing the 100 mil mark anyway and they're already doing like um what are they doing from organic right now, around 800,000 from organic a
Right.
month, so
Yeah.
it's like there's huge wins to be had, which
Mm.
is fantastic. So that's really where we can get the biggest lift,
So
instead
when
of
you're
like
seeing
someone with a
like
brand new site.
these like websites, is that your typical, so your typical target audience? Really, you're trying to avoid the guys who've just started up, unless you maybe know them and they've got a decent startup budget and are already aware of what SEO is, how much it's going to cost. So typically, what would you say is a decent budget for anyone listening? What would you say is a decent starting budget within sort of the e-com range that you should probably look to spend on SEO?
Is that what do you mean if you're completely starting out, or oh god, that it depends on the competition, doesn't it, and how many products you have and the current power of the site. If it's like a super easy niche, then a few thousand,
Yeah.
like on the low end. But if it's going to be insanely competitive and you have a long time horizon, at least 12 to 24 months for something competitive, and
So as a
at
as a
least
rule of
5, 6,
thumb,
7 grand
yeah, as a
budget.
rule of thumb, what we typically say, obviously, is SEO is no longer a quick win game. It's very
Mm,
much it is going to be. You might get some quick wins, as in very quick optimization tricks, and you can rank higher. However, you should never view it as a quick win. It is a
no.
case of it's a long term strategy, right? And that's, I think, what upsets a lot of people is they want you to rank immediately, but don't understand that that usually isn't possible. And if it is possible, it usually also unranks just as quick
Mm,
as it
this
ranks.
fleeting moment.
Exactly. So, and now it's quite interesting that you've went down an agency model. Um, so when starting the whole agency model, kind of what issues have you had so far, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I think from operational standpoint, really. So, like, I'm able to sit there, as I'm sure you are, and smash through someone's site and build the whole plan in your head and be able to execute on it, and you know, kind of pass off different parts of work to your team.
Yeah.
But you are really the central brain of it
You're
all.
the brain. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been an interesting transition especially with Olivia, my wife, who's the COO. She's been just like, you need to pull everything out of your brain and get it into an operation point of view, like step-by-step guides for everything. And like that has been very tricky to do and extremely time consuming. Like I thought, this will take a couple of days, it'll be all right. And then it's been like weeks, but I've nearly completed it, which has been great. So it's just going to get to the point where we can just become so much better with operations, and like the team can follow everything, and then I can then have a proper deep dive and check their work, as opposed to me sitting there and having it all inside of my brain and no one being able to understand, like, okay, what position are we at? Like, where are we at with this? What's being done here? Because it's all just in my head, as opposed to, inside a ClickUp or whatever the case is.
I guess the hard part of that as well is probably the natural flow of things. Like, for instance, I know when I look at a website, it just all pings into my head, and it's not a case of I've got a natural flow of, I've went here to there to there to there, and you're kind of having to actually stop that from happening and go, right, let's do, what would the first step be? Right, this is step one. This is how you produce step one. Oh, wait, this could then lead into step 2 or step 5 or step 12, depending on what you find out in step 1. Is that kind of how you've mapped it all out? So like almost like an introduction at the start, which is forever green, and you just keep on adding to it?
Yeah, what I've found is like I've tried as much as possible to be like step 1, step 2, step 3, but then it's like step 3A, step 3B, because there's like so many offshoots that can come from it, as you said. So there's like, it's a lot of like scenario based SOPs of like, if this happens, then this might potentially happen. This is then what you need to look at. This is then what you need to keep in mind. So a lot of the videos have turned out to be a little bit longer because there is so many situations, and not every single website is the same.
No.
And it's very difficult to operationalize every single step. So that's been the biggest challenge. But I mean, so far, like we've really been able to be way more efficient and not be 100% reliant on me doing absolutely everything, which is.
So would you say another way you've kind of overcome that little hurdle as well is actually like focusing in a little bit more? Because I'd imagine, different, especially if it's, let's say, e-commerce, the different e-commerce platforms are completely different, right? Like Magento is a completely different animal to Shopify, or VisionSoft, or whatever type of e-commerce software they're using. Have you like focused primarily on Shopify or WordPress, for instance? I know that can be another, probably not in the 5 or 10 million e-commerce range, but they can be pretty successful platforms, a WordPress site in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been pretty lucky, really, that most, or actually all of the clients right now have been on Shopify, which is great because our developer that we have as well, she's a Shopify expert developer, which is fantastic. So it just makes things so much easier to do. But what we found is, especially, I'm sure you've seen this a lot, when someone goes from using, for example, WordPress, and then they migrate to Shopify or some other kind of platform, whatever the case may be, absolute chaos. And they don't understand, like, all of your blog posts are linking to completely incorrect URLs now. So it's causing a whole bunch of 404 issues, or whoever has done the website development side of things has completely messed up all of your 301 redirects. So your site is absolutely tanked. They're like, our traffic was really good 6 months ago. And I'm like, what did you do 6 months ago? They're like, we did actually change. We did actually change to Shopify. I'm like, we have a lot of work to do then. Yeah. So that's the first thing that we work on, is obviously the technical SEO side of things, like getting everything sorted from that point of view is so
what would you say are some of the biggest hints and tips for people who might have a new Shopify site, biggest things to look out for from an optimization point of view?
Yeah, I think from the point of view of like keyword research, I think by far the easiest way of doing that is literally to load up a Google sheet, list out all the different products that you have or that you're about to have, and then list out all the keywords that you think people would search to find those products.
Yeah.
And then try and think outside of the box a little bit and try and think of other potential keywords people might search to find it. So usually there's like, for a single product, there's 2 or 3 different types of keywords that people are searching to find the same thing. Mm-hmm. So then it's a case of working out, okay, are those keywords semantically the same in that sense, or are they, does Google deem them as 2 totally different keywords? And then it's a case of, okay, do I need to build a separate product or separate collection page around those 2 individual ones, or do I combine them together?
Which are pretty much the exact same product for that user. He's just making two products just to satisfy the intent of Google.
Exactly, yeah. And that's what we find, especially with collection pages with like broader search terms, where someone's not 100% sure that they want this exact size of goal net.
Yeah.
Right now they just want a portable goal net, So it's a case of them working out, okay, actually we could have 5 different collection pages that target the same keyword that then increases the footprint in terms of amount of organic traffic. And that's a big win for the client. So yeah, I would definitely say that side of things is by far the quickest and easiest way of trying to optimize it. But definitely running the site, like once you've done all of that, you've set up the site, running it through Ahrefs site audit, probably the easiest thing for most people, just a $7 7-day trial. And it tells you how to fix everything. So you can literally just go through with a dev and get everything done. It's just very time intensive.
Have you got much experience, Tom, up till now with, because I know you've seen you work with multiple brands, but a lot of them being in the US. Have you done much when it comes to like multilingual, so talking in different countries with Shopify and things?
Yeah, so we've played about with our own brands, but most of the clients they're just in the States, US, and like that's all they're interested in. Yeah, because it's so big. Did you have any questions around that specifically? Or?
No, so I was going to say, do you find because I know with Shopify, obviously, if you're talking primarily English speaking, you can tend to go down like a language front, so ENUS, ENGB. And I've seen that quite a lot when it comes to Shopify. Is that kind of the situation you would advise someone if they've got like let's say an English speaking store where it could be New Zealand, Australia, maybe it's Canada, but I know obviously you've got French and that in Canada, America and the UK. Would you suggest they just do it based off like ENCA? Or would you say go down like a subfolder route of like /Canada? I'm not too familiar with Shopify. I've used it quite a few times, but I don't know how it works on a subfolder route.
Yeah, so they make it very, very easy to set up a subfolder, which is fantastic, as opposed to a subdomain, obviously, which is an ongoing argument with things. Yeah. But yeah, obviously we prefer a subfolder with things. But really, it depends on how the client runs their operations. So, like for us with pet portraits, it makes sense that we can just have /EN-CA as an example, because it's print on demand. It ships straight to Canada, which is fantastic. But obviously, some clients say in the States, if now they want to ship to the UK, well, that is like a huge operational issue to potentially do that. And if they then did want to do that, they might opt to have a separate Shopify store that is just .co.uk. So all of the apps link into their UK 3PL and everything like that. So it really depends on the setup of things, but they do make it very easy now. Shopify Markets
within Shopify, they can kind of do that. You just sort of tell them what you want and they'll sort it out for you type thing.
Yeah, you go into Shopify Markets in the back end, and then you can then set it up. Yes, it's very, very easy. And same thing with different languages as well. Like you can easily go in and translate the site. Like it is a lot of work, but it is easier than it is.
I would assume it's very similar to like WordPress, where you have like the variations of this page, and then you just putting in the different language variations and whatever it should belong to, and then that's kind of it.
Yeah,
the browser just the rest based off geographic location of the user, right?
Yeah, and they have this great like pop up that obviously detects it. It's all like
Yeah.
Shopify native and everything, which is great. So it works really, really nicely.
I know, like, one of the key elements, and I do like Shopify, one of the key elements is when anyone mentions e-commerce, I always say, really, you should be looking at Shopify primarily, is just because of the cart just seems to convert like so well. Like, it's almost like you can't replicate that same cart in WordPress for whatever reason. It does not have the same flow experience.
Yeah, and I think as Shop Pay is becoming way more popular now, that it's then becoming a lot easier and a higher conversion rate for people just to straight purchase on that particular site. But obviously, you do have limitations where unless you're on Shopify Plus, which starts at a couple grand a month, then you can't necessarily edit the checkout. So I have heard like BigCommerce and stuff like that. Apparently, that converts a lot higher, especially as you're able to really edit the checkout page and things like that. Yeah, the entirety of the experience and that. So that would be really interesting to look into more. But obviously, making a transition, like once a big site is stuck on one platform,
it becomes very hard when you've got a billion SKUs to all of a sudden transfer everything.
God, absolutely, yeah.
And that's the craziest part of all this, is like people don't understand that, like, you can't just be throwing up random SKUs. There's like an interconnectivity of the website, right? And like that becomes a problem if you're just like willy-nilly building all these products. There's no connectedness. You're then going to have to go through them and go, what's this? Well, you haven't sold any of this item. Is it worth even having it on your webpage? Probably not. Oh, actually, it fits into this cluster here. So all of a sudden it becomes like a really big mess to fix, right?
Absolutely. We have some clients as well who they love to create a bunch of new products, but they're not necessarily that mindful on the potential collections that it could go into.
Yeah.
And they love to spin up a new collection at any point in time. And we're like, where did this come from? Okay, we got another page we need to optimize. But like, and I think this is really a super important part about like being very conscious about what pages you actively go in and create on a site. So like really understanding and trying to understand like, okay, what is a customer going to search for to find this collection in the first place, instead of me just typing in the first random thing, because then obviously it creates the URL structure. And now if you're starting to get some traffic to it, you might have had a link to it. Do we want to change that now? It's, there's a lot more things that we have to weigh up and a lot more time and risk involved with certain things.
And then the problem is you've always got that lag effect as well. So if you then try and fix it, there's going to be a lag on that fix coming into play. Yes, you might have fixed it immediately, but Google has to update. Google, it could even be the next algorithm update before it's fully churning type thing.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
You educating the customer, the client in this case, on that, right?
Yeah, 100%. And when I get a bit more time, now that we've operationalized everything, I can then go back to start creating videos, because there's a lot of things that come up over and over again. So I can build videos on that and then just send them the video. Like as an example, like we have a couple of like clothing fashion clients. And when a product goes out of stock, they have like this automation. It just completely deletes the product.
I was going to say, kills the page or something.
Oh my goodness. And I'm like looking through the traffic on Ahrefs and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, why are they dropping in traffic so much, but all the other pages are going up in traffic? And I'm looking at it and it's just like red with a cross next to it, red with a cross. No. I'm like, where is this page gone? I'm opening them all up and it's like 404. I'm like, hold up, what the hell is going on here? Like, you guys just mass deleting pages or something? They're like, oh yeah, no, when the product goes out of stock, it just disappears.
Wow.
And like from when you don't come from an SEO perspective, it's just like, oh
yeah, they don't care that it's keeping things clean. It makes sense, right? But you're like, no, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so from their end, it obviously makes a lot of sense. And I was like, hold up, but what happens if you're like driving Meta ad traffic to it? Yeah. And all of a sudden it just goes to 404. What about like Google ads? And obviously SEO is insane. Like pages with thousands of traffic, and then it just disappears.
So do you find with this, Tom, obviously you're working in e-com side clients, you're doing a lot of SEO. Do you tend to find that you try to also take on their paid ads and things, or do you just, with this, you just keep it completely separate? This is our bag. We'll work alongside the paid ads guys and, work with each other, find out keywords that are working, etc. Or how do you find that working up in the flow?
Yeah, so we've been very tempted to get a Google Ads person, bring a Google Ads person in-house, because a couple of clients have requested it. And then I made the conscious decision a week or so ago that actually this is not our wheelhouse. Like, we know how to do it, we know how to run it, but let's just stick in.
That's the hardest part, right? Because then you end up potentially tarnishing what you're good at, just because you can't. Who was it? I was listening to Alex Hormozy, and he was on about some roofer his, and the guy was constantly saying, "Oh, well, there's money on the table, so I do this business and I do that. I don't like leaving money on the table." But he's like, in the not leaving money on the table, you're diluting your focus from what you were good at.
100%. Yeah, and that was I've definitely had that issue so many times. Like, at one point we were running like 40 different websites. They all had their own little teams associated with them, and it was just constantly putting out fires. Like every single day, there was no structure, and you're just like on a treadmill, but you're staying in the exact same position. So I've been extremely conscious of that. It's been a huge lesson learned. Let's just stick at what we're good at. We have great partners as well who we refer to, and they refer us business as well from a paid ads and CRO side of things as well, which is great.
So what's your approach been, Tom, with, obviously you've had multiple businesses now, what's your approach been with like leadership and team management? I know you said obviously you're working with Liv. I also work very closely with my partner, and I'm very aware of how many ructions that can cause at times. So how are you handling that, and how is the team sort of, and the team management? Do you tend to find yourself quite removed and almost just at the top, handing out a few little, not orders, but suggestions?
Yeah. Olivia is so much better at running the team than me. Like from an operational team management standpoint,
guy almost. So you're the guy who causes a little bit of chaos in the team, but she has to organize it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I might accidentally go in and like bulldozer over, oh, hey, can you just work on this quick? And she's like, hold up, they have a whole priority list. You can't just come in and be at the top of the stack, So, but having all of these operations in like ClickUp now and everything like that just makes things so much easier. But yeah, I cannot take credit for that. Like, if I look at how I used to manage and handle the team in comparison to how she does it, she has like a proper academic background. She's managed hundreds of people at Ericsson before in Sweden. So, very, very different background to me from that point of view. So, yeah, I much more sit on the side
like your background is kind of like hustle, right? It's like a hustler's background, whereas hers is probably very structured, went to university, got a degree, went the whole academic approach, right? And it is a complete different structure. It's similar to, obviously, Charlotte she often says to me, and I wonder if this relates to you, Tom, she doesn't know how I spin so many plates, but I can't relate how she can't spin more than one. It has to be the one plate, and she puts it down, and then she'll spin the next one. Whereas I have to keep them all spinning.
I know. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think that is the biggest difference. Because sometimes she's like, look, I feel quite overwhelmed with what's going on here. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm pretty chilled out. Like,
that's exact same.
We're doing like 3 businesses versus 40 before. Like, this is a breeze in comparison. So yeah, that's I would say but it's very, very good that they both do the same thing of like, let me finish this task in its entirety, and then I can put it to bed. Now I can start the next one. Whereas we're like, we could probably start 10 things at the same time. I have 100 tabs open. I got a thing over here. I got a thing. I'm on the phone. I'm messaging on WhatsApp over here. It's crazy.
No, it was kind of like back in the day when Tom and I started Searcheroo. It was kind of just a blasé conversation we had, I think, in a bar. And we're like, yeah, why don't we just start our own agency? And that was it. That was, yeah, next day we'd had the domain bought and we're away with it. And that's kind of the way we've almost always worked. However, I know it's not, I've learned over the years that that isn't always the best way, especially when it comes to seeing things through, if that makes sense. It's kind of like you need that consistency side. Someone who's
Yeah,
there doing the worker bee mentality. They're there doing it every day, churning out the stuff that's needed to make it grow.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we were both trying to run it, but then we weren't really operational.
Mm.
We had the same skill set with things,
Yeah.
and it was, yeah, we needed some solid operations that we didn't quite have at the time. Um, yeah, so it was, but yeah, seems to have done all right, which is good.
It's getting there.
Excellent.
How would you say, out of curiosity, then, how would you say or what would you say has been the biggest growth? I'll bite my tongue that time. Growth factor for your DTC agency. What have you been doing that you think has had the most growth?
Yeah, I think two things really. Like focus has been a huge one. So I'm now at the point where I've pretty much pulled myself out of petportraits.com. So I don't need to be focused in that at all, which is great. So mainly focusing on the agency side of things, obviously the operations, but really the sales side, because I've never had to sell it
No.
at all. Because you just sell yourself. You're like, oh, this is a great niche. I'll go into it. I'm sold. From your own point of view. So,
Yeah.
so that's been a really big learning curve for me is the sales side of things, and as well as is networking with the right people.
So by selling, are you meaning what you're doing, like paid traffic to a lander, and then you've got like a funnel process where you're trying to like coax them through, or are you referring to you're picking up a phone, doing some cold calls, or
Definitely not cold calling though. Yeah. Facebook ads to a lander with a VSL, book a call. We run through a discovery call, work out if they're a good fit, kind of where they're at with things. If it looks all good, and I can clearly see that we can get a lot of results here. Then we do a deep dive audit, and we go from there. So that's been the main thing really, is like, okay, working out what sequence of events works. We've been split testing a lot, trying a one call close versus two call close and everything. So and one of the friends that I'm in a mastermind group here in the States with, like, he is huge in terms of like big sales director, like building out big sales teams, and he's just like given me all of his video series of what he's created, and I've gone through all of that, and I'm just like,
wow,
okay, I didn't know anything in comparison to this. Certain nuances and ways of saying things and everything like that. So I've learned a ridiculous amount, but I still think I'm at like maybe 1 or 2% of.
It's interesting because that's also, it's the exact same part that we're now stuck on. Is we're not sales guys. We are very much the technical guy, and I've never had to sell before. So
exactly,
it's very much not my bag. And we're actually at a point where we're discussing whether or not we're always seeing ourselves as marketers. But the reality of the situation is we were SEOs and paid ads guys. We were not marketers. Marketers do the whole flow, the funnel. They can drive traffic, but primarily they're focused on customer journey and the touches throughout to get them to their end point. Yeah, I don't do that. I've never had to, throughout affiliate career, all of that, I've never had to worry about touches because it's onto someone else, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And it's like it's like eye-opening, like, wow, there's so much more to that. I've been reading books and watching a lot of Alex Hormozy, all that sort of stuff, and you're like, Jesus, this is like a whole other language that I'm now having to learn.
Yeah, it's almost like SEOs have just been in like a little hole the whole time, and we've been stuck under a rock, just driving crazy amounts of traffic, and then there's a whole nother side of it. But it's been really interesting to really get back into the e-commerce side of things from so many years ago, and really start to understand all of those touch points and the wording throughout the whole pieces of the funnel, and like bringing people back with email marketing and different flows from that side, and SMS, and there's so many moving pieces to it, which is what makes it really fun as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
but
with
this,
all of this, Tom, with all of this in mind, how are you balancing like the demands of like running, multiple businesses now? I think you said 3 businesses.
mm,
Obviously, you're down to one being the primary DTC now, so you're slightly removed. But how are you running? How are you doing personal life? How are you separating the two? How have you got any sort of processes in place or disciplines that you kind of do each day, routines?
um, yeah. So I'll try and wake up as early as possible, and then meditate for 10 minutes each morning.
Or you
That is,
meditate. See, I've tried
yeah,
that. I've tried it so many. So I started doing like Wim Hof, like the breath
yeah,
work.
yeah,
I just struggle, right? And look, here was out here. I struggled when, like, I know it's beneficial. Well, sorry, I'm told it's beneficial for us,
yeah,
but I don't know if that makes sense. I know, like, it makes
yeah.
sense that it is, but I'm not seeing a direct impact from. I've done breath work now for 30 days. I don't really feel any different, except I look like an idiot sat there breathing for 10 minutes each day.
Okay, I think though what it's worth doing, what I've noticed with meditation, like I have to do guided meditation. If I don't
Yeah.
do that, my brain just goes off on a whole nother thing, and I just sit there for 10 minutes, and I come out of it. And I'm like, what on earth have I done? I'll send you some
I was
really
going
good
to say,
ones
I'll
that
also put
David
them on
sends
the.
me.
I'll put them on the bottom of the video as well for anyone interested. Because I'm all about biohacking and things like that as
Yeah,
well. So,
yeah, and anything over 10 minutes, I start to get bored. So it's
yeah,
like 10 minutes is the
yeah,
absolute sweet spot. There's a couple of go-to ones that David Longacre, shout out to him.
yeah.
He always sends me new ones, so it's been great. But what I really realized is like, yeah, if I do it for 30 days and then I'm like, don't really feel very different, same as you. But then if I don't do it for a couple of days, oh my god, do I feel the difference? And I think
Right.
that's really the biggest thing. So I found when I don't meditate first thing, just for 10 minutes, basically as soon as I get up, um, my brain is so scattered. Like, and I've also realized that coffee adds to that. So I
Hmm.
now have like pretty much completely cut out coffee.
Oh
Um,
wow! See, I can't. There, I could
I
probably do
still
that.
have caffeine. I
Right.
still
Okay.
have like the Celsius little sachet things, but
Okay.
coffee specifically, I have no idea why it just completely just scrambles my brain, and I find it very difficult to focus. And it really like I don't know, like 2x or 3x, like my ADHD side of things. So I feel I'm a lot more calm, a lot more focused when I meditate and I don't drink coffee.
So what my
Um,
replacement for the meditation? I don't know if this probably technically is. I don't have any devices on in the morning when I get up. Obviously, I've got my watch. I click go on cool down mode, and I go into my little steam room. I do 15
Excellent.
minutes just sat there, just breathing.
Yeah.
15 minutes, and then I get out of that and jump straight into my cold plunge for 5 minutes. And
Nice.
again, that is it. That's 20 minutes there. But I don't
Yeah.
class that as meditation because it almost feels like a workout. But obviously, you can't think of it. The only thing I'm thinking of is I'm melting here and then I'm freezing here. That is literally all my head goes to. I'm freezing cold. I'm too hot. That's it. So
But I
is
think,
that not like a
yeah.
form? I guess that might
Oh,
be a form
yeah.
of meditation.
I would say so, especially as you're breathing through it and you're doing like a mentally difficult or
Yeah.
challenging thing first thing in the morning, and you get out and you're like, "Fuck yeah!"
Every day
you
on
know,
it. I've done that
I'm
now.
ready now.
I've done that since January this year. Every day,
Mm,
having the only time I sometimes miss the cold plunge, but I'll have a cold shower is if I'm traveling. And
yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
steam room it very much depends on where I am. Usually, I'll not get
yeah,
that if I'm traveling, but I'll never ever miss cold. It just won't necessarily be as cold as the tub, right?
yeah, yeah. You
That's
just
the way
reminded me. Actually, I
I
need
live
to
it,
get
innit?
another. I need to get another cold plunge because I was doing the cold plunge in the first thing
Like
in the
I feel
morning, and it's just
fantastic
like,
in terms of like
oh god,
inflammation, all
it's
of that. It's
yeah,
so good for all of that. So
yeah.
what else are
I
you
found it
doing
just woke
throughout
me
the
up.
day?
That's my main thing really, and
That's the main
then
thing.
I literally have my remarkable, but just like a pad, pen and paper basically. And the night
Is
before, I
that the
always
new
write
one?
out. That is, I finally gave in
Is that
and
the
got the
new
new
one?
one.
Is it? I haven't got the new one. I'm still look at this, Tom. I'm still very much pad paper writing here.
Yeah,
To do
I
lists.
I know you like your gadgets. So
No.
I honestly, I think it'd be a good investment for you. That I was always, I love to write stuff down and like write out what I'm going to do that day. But what I found is that I kept just losing the notebook,
Hmm.
or I'd have like two. I'd have one in my bag. I'd go to the office, and then it'd be like, oh, where the fuck is that gone? But then also the other thing is, how do you go back and find notes that you've written down that you know are important? I was spending minutes trying to find shit.
Mm.
Whereas this, I've got like everything is in folders, everything is named, and then I only use certain things for certain things. Like, like my daily tasks. It's a new day, I do a new piece of paper. Great. And now I can go back 6 pages and I can see exactly where it is. Like, you'd have to have a separate notebook for that specifically,
Right.
which is a pain in the ass to have like 10
Yeah.
different notebooks, 10 different
Yeah.
things. So if I'm at a mastermind group, okay, cool. I'm in this mastermind. This is the new date for it. And then at any point in time, I can go, oh, what did that guy say that I wrote down? Instead of being like, I've lost that piece of paper or whatever it is, I can go, bam, bam. There it was. Sweet. Cool. I'll go do that now. So it just
No.
makes things a lot easier. I'll send you
Yeah.
my affiliate link.
Yeah, send it the link. I used to actually have Remarkable, to be fair. I do have a digital pad. I just always forget.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And it's the older one that looked like the newer version, the Remarkable 2. Whereas I had
Yeah,
the original one.
the old one, so the new one doesn't have buttons down here, and the buttons
Yeah,
were amazing. This
yeah.
one is annoying because you have to kind of scroll, and sometimes it doesn't do it, and it's a little
So I've
bit
actually got
frustrating.
the better one, you see. I don't need to upgrade. I just need to use it more.
That's it. Yeah, yeah, but it's fantastic. So I think that's definitely one thing. But I mean, we're pretty bad with like what time we finish working, especially right now as we
This is
are in like a
literally,
massive growth phase.
this is something that I was talking to Dooley on this morning. So
Mm,
yesterday I was up at 4:30 a.m.
yeah,
I was pretty much at the computer till 6 last night, but then I'm reading on my phone and all that. I go to
yeah,
bed at 9, half 9. I was then up again this morning at 4:30 and to start
yeah,
work again. And then he's like, he literally messages us going, dude, it's meant that how like much you're into the work and all that at the minute. However, you might
yeah,
end up
but
burning out. I'm like, dude,
yeah,
come on. Like, what's going on?
yeah.
I'll not burn out, motherfucker. I'll keep going.
Yeah, it is difficult because then you're like, oh, am I actually experiencing burnout or am I just being a pussy?
Well, exactly, that's that. And
it's-
then I'm like, well, I do the cold plunge every day. I'm not a pussy. I've got this. Come on, just mentally strong. Have another coffee. And then that's
yeah,
the
that's it.
problem.
Yeah,
I'm
another
6 or 7
Pepsi Max.
coffees in today. Like, I've had a lot of coffee.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what's interesting is, though, I'm actually tempted to do what you've done. And what was it called? Celsius.
Celsius. Yeah, it's a lot. It's way more expensive to find in the UK.
Is it
But I mean, it's still.
worth it?
I mean, it's pennies in comparison to like going to Starbucks every day and getting a coffee, as an example. Um, but yeah, they're the Celsius sachets or packets, something like that. You can find them on Amazon UK.
Is that the one I
Um,
had at your house once, I believe?
Probably.
Once
Yeah,
upon a
they're like
time.
little
Little
white.
sachet. It was like a raspberry flavor or something.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. So I literally have like maybe one and a half of them a day throughout like the entire day. I just have half of one in the morning. Um, but yeah, apart from that, we're just working an awful lot right now, and there's just so many things to do outside of things like investment side of things. I've got all my UK property up for sale. We've just got to sort out so much stuff this end with we're finding a house and now we need to find a dog groomer and I need to find a new barber and stuff like that. There's so many like little things that I should have got a PA on board before we moved.
So, what
Yeah.
would you say? Well, what would you say the future for this business is? The aim for this business to grow even more? Are you wanting to build another brand personally and just kind of have this business as a little sort of side project with sort of being run by obviously your team or?
Yeah, I mean the bit that I really enjoy the most is seeing the potential and then seeing the results,
Yeah.
like from SEO just in general. And what makes it really fun is that I then don't need to go and invest in that business. I then don't need to spend all of the years getting it to the point of where it is. We can just bring clients in who can massively benefit from SEO, and we get to be the driver of that. And then I get to then see the potential, and then I get to see then the results, which is great. So it's like the best part of SEO that we could possibly do is then what we get to do with the agency, which is great. So yeah, I definitely see this being a hell of a lot bigger than it is now, especially as there's so many people in the D2C space or e-commerce space that just don't have a clue about SEO, and there's just so much potential, especially when they're already spending, tens of thousands on Google ads, and they're basically doing no SEO. And we can then lower their dependency on Google ads by then ranking them for those keywords that are making conversions, which is fantastic. So we're able to pull that Google ads data and then turn that background into organic side of things and work out which pages to work on first.
I think it's one of the hard battles, and like I've had it a few times with people, is like chatting to them and they're on about the Google AdWords and how much the CPA is, all of this. But then for whatever reason, for instance, a very an example that came up recently was a friend's business does about 12 million in the UK. I went and had a big chat with their marketing guy, and he's telling me about the CPA, he's telling me about gross profit margin, all of this sort of stuff. And anyway, I was like, okay, and what's your budget for SEO? We don't really have one. I was like, right, well, I said, you come back to me with a budget. Bear in mind, it's a £12 million company. A year. They came back with, we've probably got about £500 to spend on SEO. And I was like, the local Skip guy has more money than that to spend on SEO a month. Like, nah, crack on. You just keep doing ads, which is getting more expensive, and you're not making money anymore from it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the crazy thing about ads, isn't it? Is like, as you scale, your margins are still like that all the way up, versus SEO, your costs are flat and your traffic can then just go up like that, which is nuts. So that's where it becomes super profitable, which is why we like working on big sites where we can just go and re-optimize, do very specific link building to pages that really require it. And then you can get that hockey stick effect whilst having a fixed cost, which is great. So,
and typically, what does the package look like for you, Tom? So let's say starting package. Do you try and price it on time, or are you pricing it on? How are you doing it? Is it a monthly subscription model, and that usually factors in, a period of hours?
Yeah. So we started off. It was just a set retainer, and it was kind of like here's the set packages type thing. Yeah. But most people don't know what package they need, obviously, given your example as well. So what we've basically done now is switched over to a deliverable based thing. If you imagine like a credit system, so you are buying X number of credits on a monthly basis. And depending on our bespoke strategy on a 90-day sprint is specifically what we work on, is, okay, we need more emphasis over here. So this might be that month one, we do a lot more re-optimization of pages because it requires it. And then we hit month 4 and actually you've only got 20 pages or products on your site and we've already re-optimized those. So we're changing over now to a lot more on the link building side of things. Digital PR is a massive focus of ours as well. Really building out that team because we're finding that getting those big links is a lot easier when you know exactly how to do it. It's taken a good few years to get to that point, but now it's coming thick and fast, which is great. So yeah, really focusing on that, and that's a really big value add for clients as well. Getting them in gift guides, expert commentary, and obviously data-driven stories as well. So yeah, so basically, we switched over to deliverables. It makes things a lot easier.
And then it's really credits with you, and then your team decides where that credit gets spent within the 90-day flow.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It works really nicely.
Obviously, I know we're getting close on the hour now, and I try to keep these about an hour long. So obviously, I can talk to you all day. We often, we often do that anyway. What would you say, Tom, is the best piece of business? I love actually finishing with these sort of questions. The best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Best piece of business
And
advice.
this is exactly why I like asking them, because everyone has to stop, pause, and think.
Best piece of business advice. I don't know if this is necessarily business, but it's something that I asked a mentor. I was kind of at the point where I was like, do I invest in property? And he was like, only invest in property when you're at the point of when you have like a large amount of excess capital. And I was like, huh, interesting. And I was like, why is that? Is that because it will take a lot of time and you might need those resources to actually refund your business?
Yeah.
And he was like, what you should do, or maybe not what you should do, but what you could do, what he would recommend, or he did recommend, was absolutely squeeze every single last thing out of the current business that you're doing. And when that is fully done, then move on to the next thing. So, for example, with like the affiliate sites that we used to build, we got to the point where every single last thing was squeezed out before Google changed their algorithm, Amazon changed everything, and then it was like, okay, this gravy train is over. Like unless we really start to go in and innovate and try and evolve and everything like that, which we weren't willing to do at the time, that chapter's now closed, and now we'll move into something different. So those two things I think have been very important, because I was going to start investing in property or real estate sooner than maybe I should have. And even now, I'm still like, was that the right move to do?
Well, what's interesting is Dooley, obviously, we both know Dooley very well. I mentioned it once, Charlotte's very interested in property, being a degrees of quantity surveyor.
Yeah,
However, Dooley went, Carl, you get potentially a 10% return,
yeah,
potential, and that could be in 2 or 3 years, or you can invest like tight, and that could be for a big chunk of money. It could be 500k or whatever for that 10%.
yeah,
A lot of capital down. He says, or you could spend that 500k and probably rank 35 different websites and make a hell of a lot more money,
yeah.
like 10x, 20x your money for that same capital investment. And I was like, that is true. And he says, and the only thing you're honing in on there is your skills of ranking the website. Whereas
Yeah,
the other one is relying on tradesmen, it's relying
yeah,
on marketplace, it's relying on buyers, like it's relying on loads of different elements, interest rates, mortgages, banks, like it's relying on so many different factors to get that maximum capital return. It's just almost not worth it.
absolutely. Yeah, and the other big thing as well is the hidden time associated with it. So,
Yeah.
like, we've got property managers doing my property side of things, but then it's still like there's still messages, there's still other things. Oh, you need to sign this bit of paperwork. Oh, can you just quickly sort this out? Whatever the case is, and there's just so much like extra stuff that takes away from the main thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure like when you're in like the flow state of
Of course.
working, and you
Yeah.
get two phone calls over a 3 hour period, is completely messes the whole thing up.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, oh, can you just call this person instead? So very frustrating. I'm actually going through and selling all my property right now, and it's amazing. After like 4.5 years of ownership of some of them, like there's like zero appreciation.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the biggest lie that I've been told. Like, oh, property appreciates like 10 to 20% a year, or whatever it is, 5 to 10% average, or whatever
Yeah.
the case is. And I'm like, even at the peak, it still didn't appreciate that much. And at the end of the day, it's only worth what someone is willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I'm getting offers like under what I paid 4.5 years ago. And obviously right now is not obviously the best time to sell
No.
with interest rates so high and everything. But yeah, I've been like, God, was that just like a waste in comparison to, what we could have put it into. And now that I'm learning stuff here in the States, like I'm in a lifestyle mastermind group, and the kind of stuff that they're investing in, like they're just getting 12% easy just for putting money into a fund.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is a way higher yield than I'm getting on property. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and way less aggro. It's one
Yeah.
single form I got to fill in versus all these different tenants. And like we've had issues with a tenant lately, like didn't pay for 7 months, had to go through the whole court system. And now obviously UK government is then making it a
They're
lot
making
more
it
favorable
more
for,
favorable for
for
the tenants.
yeah. And I'm like, how much more favorable do you want it to be? Like he hasn't paid for 7 months and isn't going to pay, and
Yeah.
he's been living rent free for seven
Oh
months.
no,
Like,
but what they will do is they'll do a court order to how much you can afford to pay. So you might get like £1 a week, but then no one follows up with the court order. So like if he stops paying a few months in, like it doesn't
yeah,
matter.
oh,
It's
it's
ridiculous.
crazy. Yeah, so that level of headache, I now understand what my mentor meant by that.
Yeah.
When I asked him like 5 or so years ago now, was basically like if you have a big liquidity event and you've basically now not doing that business anymore, then you can then go into
Then you're
property because
free.
because you have the time, you have the capital, you have the
Yeah.
headspace to do it, as opposed to running your main operational business and then trying to do all the other stuff on the side. Is just such a drain. Yeah, good problems to have, but it's more money, more problems type thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So how
I'm
would
investing
you?
differently.
Obviously, if you were looking back on yourself, I assume that's something you'd probably change is the investment into the UK property side. Would you change that element, or would you leave it as it is?
Yeah, I think in the position that I was in, still living in the UK and not really knowing what else I would have put money into, I
Yeah,
probably would have done the same thing. If I was in the same position now, there's
you
no
definitely would.
way I would have
Problem is, it's
put.
hindsight, though, right?
Well, and the knowledge, the other
Yeah,
knowledge that you get from being in different groups and different mastermind groups, and I found that very valuable to like try and remove myself a bit outside of the just SEO masterminds,
yeah.
because that's great, but we know so much about SEO. I'm like, how much could we
How much
learn an extra
more
one
can you
percent?
learn?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah,
But like me going into okay, how to invest and how to do taxes correctly in the US mastermind group, um, is like exponentially more. I'm the guppy in the Shark
yeah.
Tank, as
You're the
opposed
noob.
to as opposed to being a lot more knowledgeable,
Yeah,
on that subject. So, and that's really opened things up. I've met so many new people. We I didn't quite answer your question earlier, but there is a very big business that we are looking at starting. We're just getting the final formulations with things, so that could be very freaking large. And that's really come from, again, networking with people in the mastermind.
right.
So getting in those circles, I think it's a tough pill to swallow, to fork out 50 grand a year to be in a mastermind. But then it's like, if you look back at those connections that you've made
It's
and
been worth it.
what has potentially happened from that and what can happen from that, it is then worth it, which is
Yeah.
good to see. But that's what I'd recommend people to do.
So how can people get hold of you, Tom, if they want to speak to you or your business?
Yeah, either go to dtcseoagency.com, and shoot us an email from there. I don't actually think we have any email. You can't actually contact us unless you apply. So ping me on LinkedIn if you just search my name, Thomas Phillips, or Instagram, Thomas MR Phillips, or Twitter or X. I think it's exactly the same people as well. So
What I'll also do is I'll add them all down to the bottom as well. So obviously, if you want to get hold of Tom or chat anything e-commerce, SEO, I'm sure he's willing to entertain you, especially if you're a bigger business. That would be nice for him.
that's it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Excellent,
sweet.
Tom. Cheers for coming on, mate. It's been class speaking to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure.